I'd love to hear now from Sharon LeGore, the mother of Angie from Pennsylvania.
Thank you very much for allowing me to share a bit about my story and what heroin has done to my family. My name is Sharon LeGore, and I live in York, Pennsylvania. I want to share with you the effects that heroin has had on my family, and it's impossible to share these effects from over 18 years of our family in 3 minutes, but I'm sure going to try. So what I want you to understand, that each little small couple sentences represents years behind it. This doesn't happen in a day. But I want you to understand that this is a family disease, and it's not just about the addict who needs treatment. There are mothers, fathers suffering. There are brothers, sisters suffering as well, and extended family members. This is the first time I've shared this, but here goes. My daughter started using drugs around the age 14 and 15, and as you said, marijuana started it all. Her addiction continued. She was a follower, so when people offered her things, she wanted to be part of the crowd and took it. Her drug use escalated to heroin. She called me and told me, because we had a great relationship, "Mom, I'm using heroin." I was just like, "What, Angie, are you doing?" "What are you doing?" I'm sorry. Looked like a green light to me. I asked her what she was doing. She said, "I'll never inject, Mom. I'm just snorting it." I was so naive and ignorant that I didn't know enough about the drug to know what it was doing to my daughter's brain.
Yeah, that's great.
She told me 3 months into her drug use with heroin, we had a phone conversation. She said, "Mom, I want you to know that I feel like I'm in a deep, dark hole that I cannot get out of." I told her, "Angie, go back to treatment." She got a beep in and hung up the phone. 3 days later, her body was found by the police, thrown down a muddy embankment next to a creek by her drug dealer. He left her lie there from Monday night until sometime late Tuesday night, Wednesday morning, when she passed. And then he didn't want to be implicated, and that's what he chose to do. A lot behind that story, but let me go on. 1 month after my daughter's death, I came home and found one of my sons on the floor from a suicide attempt. We later found out that he felt guilty for his sister's death, that he should have protected her, that he should have told what he knew. He didn't tell us what he knew about her heroin use and how bad it was. We took him to Hershey Medical Center, and they admitted him into the psychiatric floor. I literally could not move. I just lost my daughter, and my son is in there of an overdose. I was admitted to the cardiac wing, so we're in 2 separate parts of the hospital. I actually broke my heart from the stress. I take medication to this very day for that. A lot in that paragraph, a lot of years in hurt. 1 year later, my youngest son had a breakdown. When he found out about his sister, he acted like nothing happened, and we couldn't understand that. But every child takes this differently. Every child. I thought the one I didn't have to worry about was the straight A, B student. He's the one that tried to take his life. I thought my youngest didn't understand. You know, he's 12, 13 years old. He didn't understand. But in 1 year, it exploded. And my son began to self-medicate at age 13, and it wasn't long. His drug of choice was cough syrup.
But it wasn't long before addiction set in and he developed severe mental health issues. And he's given me permission to say this, but he is now diagnosed bipolar, schizophrenic, and borderline personality disorder. A lot in that. Let's go on to the next. My oldest son, Christian, was in a car crash, went through the windshield, and as a result developed a bruised brain, had glass in his skull and neck injuries. He was given opioids for the pain. It's here we go again. I thought, prescription, it's okay. You follow the doctor's advice. And I was totally wrong. Once they stopped prescribing the medication, we found he was already addicted to heroin, and eventually he moved on to a cheaper drug, heroin. Let's move on to the next way it's affected my family. My son is an addict. His son is in his mother's custody, but there was an issue with an abusive stepfather. So my grandson Tyler, and I talked to him, he said to tell you his name, was placed in the custody of children and youth. Trust me when I tell you this is his grandmother. I want nothing more than to be able to help him. My husband works nights. I travel with my job. And I can't handle the trauma that this child has endured because of drugs in his family. He needs help, and he needs mental health help. Eventually, my son worked on his recovery and was able to get custody of Tyler back. My son did well for a while, but the addiction to the opioid drug remained, and my son relapsed, causing a spiral down. Violated probation, ended up in jail. And just a quick note, we're not only talking about our families, but I want you to know what happens in the jails. These young people brought in, my son included, was put in prison to cold turkey off of heroin. He tells me that there's so many kids in there, young men, who are throwing up and going through this alone, without support. And I just tell you that to please keep in mind that it extends far much into our correction system. My grandson had to be taken back into children and youth custody. No foster parents want to take a traumatized teenager, especially when they find out that there is addiction in the family. Yesterday, I received a call from my youngest, begging me to get him out of jail. He's been sitting in the prison, heading on 3 months next week, in solitary confinement, waiting for treatment. There's nothing worse than for a mental health patient that also has addiction to board them and leave them alone. And it's happened many times to my son. He has a co-occurring disorder. That's another issue. A lot of our addicts have co-occurring. They've been through so much trauma. I ended this call with Sean, and I headed straight on to a court hearing for my grandson's placement. They brought my oldest to the hearing in chains, so the judge could have him there as they decided where to send Tyler next. The decision was made. They took Chris away, and my grandson will now go to a lesser constrictive facility that can address his trauma and mental health issues as a result of addiction in the family. Over 18 years, and heroin is still devastating my family. My daughter is dead. I have 2 sons in prison currently. I have a grandson sitting in a detention center because there's no place to put him. He asked me that I tell you this, so I promised him I would. And he said he wanted you to know, when he was born, his life was supposed to go in one direction. He said, use the hand signals. He said he wanted you to know, because of heroin, his life is like this. Make no mistake about this. It's a family disease. We need an opioid strategic plan in this country. We need a call to action, and we need Congress to stand hand in hand with the families across this nation. We represent a very, very small few. The CARE legislation needs to get to the president's desk, as you've already heard, but we also need funding to put that in effect. We need funding to educate our families. We need funding as a lot of our families have started organizations. I did myself as a dental assistant. I left my job to become an advocate. I didn't even know what an advocate was, but I wanted something done. 18 years later, I still want something done. We need the funding to put these laws into effect. Maybe they're not perfect. We can come back and add on later, but get us started. We need tools. We need resources. I speak for my daughter who cannot speak. I speak for the families who have lost children. I speak for those, as in my own family, that have children still suffering, even as adults. Suffering from heroin addiction, opioid addiction, and their families who are out there with no hope, no help, and still waiting for answers. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much for sharing, and you are a very effective advocate, and it's really important for all of us and all of our colleagues for you to come and share this story. I know it's painful, but for us to understand the magnitude of the impact across families and throughout our society. One of the theories that I heard was that back in the 1970s, that we had a major public policy shift to empty out the mental health hospitals, the big institutionalized mental health hospitals. And it was a good thing for people to move closer to home and not be confined, and to, hopefully the theory was that they would get the mental health treatment in their communities. And over time, that was not funded sufficiently. And this person shared this theory with me that instead what we've done all across the country, state legislatures, the Congress, in every single state, is fill up our criminal justice system with people who are suffering from co-occurring illness, substance use disorder, mental health issues, and we're not giving them the treatment that they need. And then we act shocked, totally shocked, that they come out and recommit crimes because they've had no treatment and end up back in the hospital, back in the criminal justice system. Mm-hmm. I have one county in my district, because we've been trying to tackle what are some innovative solutions to get past this. And I just want to tell you a quick story. Sullivan County, small county in New Hampshire in the western part of the state. And they realized that the drug crime was going up so fast. This little county was going to have to add 200 beds to their prison. It's expensive with tax dollars. And they said there's got to be a better solution. So 3 people got together and started a program inside this small county jail. And they have in-house treatment. They brought the treatment in-house. And they have all the time in the world. So they can do a 90-day program. They can do this program as long as they want. And she said to me, we have a very low no-show rate. And everybody laughs. But the reality is it's hard in a rural community to get to your appointments and to get to your rehab. And the key to this program is understanding the changes in the brain, because when they come out, they have an entire year where this county, one by one, will help them with job training. They'll help them with going back to school. They'll help them with transportation. They've even had situations where if they go back to their own community, their bad habits, bad influences, they say, fine, we'll help you move to a new community. And do you want to know, they have dropped their recidivism from the 80th percentile to the 20th percentile.
Absolutely.
And think of the impact on the families, on the communities, the productivity. Mr. Siegel said music that will be written, books that will happen, incredible things from an entire generation of people. So I really appreciate you being with us.